My name is John Battsek. I run an independent documentary production company called Passion Pictures, which I've been running with my great friend Andrew Ruman for the past 20 years. And I guess we have become a specialist in making theatrical feature documentaries. Started with a film called One Day in September about the Munich Olympics. Most recently, last year, we made a film called Listen to Me, Marlon, about Marlon Brando. And in between those two films, we've made 50, 60 odd movies. So yeah, that's who we are and what we do. I produce and exec produce all the films that we make at Passion. So I'm a veteran, they call me now, which is a bit depressing. I'm a veteran documentary producer at probably the most prolific documentary production company in this country. There are many things that I love about producing documentaries. I suppose most notably it's the fact that there's something incredibly rewarding about telling true stories, about getting to the real, honest heart of a story. More often than not, we're telling quite tragic, often very important, very dramatic stories, and hearing the real story come out of the mouths of the people who really experienced the story that you're telling is just an incredibly powerful experience. And I've found that audiences respond in a similar way. They find it very affecting, very emotional, and ultimately, you know, I've been lucky enough to have many experiences where I get to see both audiences respond to these stories and also the people whose stories we've told react to the way that we've told them. And in almost every case, if not in every case, the effect that the making of these stories has had on the various people is so extraordinary and always in a sort of positive, beneficial way that I can't think of a better reward for the end of the work that you do than to get that sort of reaction. So it's a sort of, and until you do it, you can't quite understand how amazing it is. And I think what's kind of interesting about that, it's not about money, it's not about glory, it's not about any of it. It's about, as I said, that sort of the rewards of being as authentic as you possibly can, being as honest as you possibly can in terms of storytelling, and it never ceases to be a pleasure. The other thing I love about making documentaries is that it's the ultimate form of teamwork, and you know I love that aspect of what we do. There's an inner core of people with whom I collaborate, and collectively we make these films. And there's just something wonderful about that sort of team spirit ethic of making docs. I mean, the kind of stories that inspire me, you know, they're invariably about, actually they're invariably about ordinary people behaving extraordinarily. You know, that's something that I never cease to find inspiring. You know, we tend to tell stories about people who are just like you and I, who behave in a way that I could never imagine behaving. And in some respects, there's something incredibly inspiring about that, you know, because it's not like these people are extraordinary so that you can sort of distance yourself from them. Often they are, as I said, they're no different from you and I. In many cases, they're far less privileged than someone like me, and yet they behave in a way that I would dream that I had the bravery and the courage to behave that way. And then also I get the chance to tell many stories that have the backdrop of sport, and I'm a sports nut, and so that's always a great pleasure. So I've got to make some stories about people that I respect and admire tremendously, who have been involved through the nature of what they do sports-wise in dramatic and triumphant experiences, and that's always great fun. I think over the years there are a few films that have a special place in my heart. I guess inevitably the first film I ever made, which was called One Day in September, which was about the 1972 Munich Olympics massacre where the 11 Israeli athletes were murdered. that was the first feature documentary I ever made. It was an idea that popped into my head when I was kind of floundering in my life. I didn't really know what I wanted to do professionally. I just produced a movie. It was a horrible experience. And I went into a cinema and watched a film called When We Were Kings, and halfway through that movie, which was a feature doc effectively about Muhammad Ali, and halfway through that film I just thought, this is what I want to do. I want to make films like this. And then in the next hour I had the idea for this film about the Munich Olympics, and 2.5 years later we'd made the film. It won an Academy Award. I mean, it was just sort of a dream journey. That film holds a very special place in my heart. There's a film we made called The Tillman Story, which sort of encapsulates everything that I love about making feature documentaries. It was about an extraordinary young man called Pat Tillman who, at the height of his powers in America, when he was playing for the Arizona Cardinals in the NFL, earning a vast fortune, post 9/11, he just decided that chucking a football around a football field was kind of a ridiculous thing to do when there was a war going on, and so he gave it all up to join the military with his brother, and then very tragically was killed, and then the government lied about how he had died, and it's a truly tragic story in which his family, and in particular his mother, his extraordinary mother, who remains incredibly dear to me and who I'm a great, great friend of and who I genuinely love as a human being, took it upon herself to challenge the powers that be, to tell her the truth about what happened and to be accountable for what happened to her son. And the whole experience of making that film, for all of us connected, was so extraordinary, so moving, so inspiring. And as I said, we probably made that film at least 10 years ago. Danny Tillman, as she's called, and her remaining children and her ex-husband and all the people we collaborated with remain really close friends of mine. When they come here, they come and hang out with us. When we go there, we hang out with them. I mean, what kind of work can give someone that sort of experience and that sort of reward, I mean, it's sort of indescribable. And then actually last year we made this film called Listen to Me, Marlon, about Marlon Brando, which was, again, a really extraordinary experience. We got a whole lot of people who were either related to him, his children, or the people who ran his estate, entrusted us with a very ambitious way we wanted to try and tell Marlon's story in his own voice. And there was something about his voice, something about his honesty, something about what he had to say, and the fact that we had access to hundreds of hours of audio recordings that he'd made about his life that enabled us to make this brutally honest film about, not just about a life, but in my mind about life. And in some respects, I find that film, it certainly talks to me about many aspects of my own life. And of course, I'm no Marlon Brando in any way, shape or form, and yet there were so many lessons in it. And, that film also has a very special place in my heart, but as do many of the others that I've made. Why did I decide to produce the first Peace One Day documentary? I didn't decide to produce the first Peace One Day documentary. Jeremy decided that I was going to produce the first Peace One Day documentary. I'm pretty sure I remember him calling me up out of the blue and saying, "This is who I am, this is what I want to do, can I come and see you?" To which I, as politely as I could, said, "No, you can't come and see me." And then he came and saw me. And I also remember pretty clearly thinking, okay, I'm definitely not going to help this guy because I don't have the time and I don't really know what he wants and I'm not sure I really believe him. And he's definitely got to cut that ponytail off or I'm not going to be able to take him seriously. And he did come to see me, and I'm sure I did say no, and then I produced the film. Jeremy, from day one, was as passionate and committed as he is today. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe he's 1,000 times more passionate and committed today, but he couldn't have been much more passionate and committed than when I first met him. And at the heart of what Jeremy was trying to do then and what he has established now was something that I felt, why wouldn't one want to help? It's like, it's so easy to be cynical. It's so easy to say things like, he's got a ridiculous ponytail, I don't want to help the guy. But the truth is, what he was trying to do, particularly at the time that he was trying to do it, and when we were making that first film, I forget exactly the dates, but certainly 9/11 happened in the middle of film one, I seem to remember. It's just too easy to be cynical, as I said, and go, this is ridiculous. And I didn't want to do that. I felt like it was something that you know, as he used to say, and he probably still says, if 3 people took notice of it, then that's better than no one. And so, you know, ultimately, I became very happy to help him as best I could. I mean, you know, I think the journey with Peace One Day Films is always driven by Jeremy. Jeremy's doing the vast amount of the work, the lion's share of the work. What I was doing, I feel like, you know, I just constantly wanted to provide whatever support I could. And often that was, can you connect me to this person? Can you connect me to that person? Can you help bring the BBC in? Or can you help find other international partners? Jay's he was very collaborative. You know, he wants to learn from people who know more than him or know things in areas that he doesn't know. To be honest, the second film, he drove even more than the first film in terms of the producing. And in some respects, I was also always there to try and rein him in, because he's that enthusiastic that, you know, to his credit, he can get carried away. And I think, you know, I know that for all that I could park my cynicism, most people can't and don't park their cynicism with this sort of thing. And I wanted to give him the best possible chance of not being able to be easily dismissed by those people who wanted to dismiss him. And so, you know, we had and as you'll see in film 1, the ponytail came off. And you know, that's a fact. People react to that kind of thing. It's ridiculous, but they do. So, you know, it was just, he's very easy to get on with, and you know, it was like a guy. I was sort of a sort of guiding force through both those films, just trying to keep him focused and on the right path, and to prevent him from opening himself up to so much of the criticism that could come his way, and that does come his way, and it's a constant battle, I'm sure, and more power to him that he keeps going and going and going. I mean, I felt like it was fanciful and foolish and naive, and at the same time, why not? I mean, where's the harm in it? If you establish a day of peace, just by the very nature of establishing it, and of course in film 1, I seem to remember, it's a long time ago now, but the UN passed that resolution. Even if it stops there, what an amazing thing to have achieved out of a little home in Richmond, or wherever the hell it was at the time. You know, I was anxious that people wouldn't observe it. I was anxious that it wouldn't have a big effect. And you know, to a certain extent, I remain concerned, because I know it has had a profound effect globally. The world doesn't seem to be much safer to me, which is a great tragedy. But it's definitely better off for the existence of the Day of Peace, and so, you know, I applaud it. And as I said, if 10 people pay attention to it, then that's 10 more than if they didn't. And in that respect, we know millions of people have observed it and continue to observe it, and more do every year. And so the cynics can blather on all they want, and the world can continue to be a tragically violent place. But there's a day of peace, and in places around the world, some people stop killing each other on that day. So who could possibly knock that? I mean, you know, I suppose the principal thing that drives me in my journey as a filmmaker, film producer, is wanting to move people emotionally with the stories that we tell. And, you know, at its best possible, at the sort of most impactful possible level, for those films to cause a change in the way people go about their lives, in the way people think, in the way people view their own lives. You know, I think one of the things I've learned from making the documentaries that we've made is I think I used to be a sort of the grass is greener elsewhere kind of person. You know, I was always looking for the moment where I'd get some. I'd always be looking at the idea that if and when I get there, everything will be, you know, that much better. And I think I've learned through telling true stories with real people that it doesn't get any better than the second that you're living in. And that I've found for me has been an incredibly valuable lesson, and I think people sort of get that from a lot of the films we make. I decided to concentrate on documentary filmmaking rather than movie making for a couple of reasons. One is the first movie I ever made was a narrative movie. I think the best way to describe me as a narrative movie producer would be incompetent. I did a terrible job. It was a terrible film. It was a miserable experience. Everything about it was thoroughly unrewarding in every way it could possibly be. The only thing I can thank it for is it pushed me in the direction of documentaries. And since then, I've made a couple of other narrative movies, each one of which has been a less pleasant experience than the one before. I sort of feel like someone's telling me what I should be doing, and what I should be doing is making documentaries, not making movies. I don't think I have the patience, and I don't think I've got the skill set, or I haven't thus far, to be a good movie producer. We do still have some ambitions to make movies, myself and my business partner, but mainly because we're just determined to go through one experience of making a movie that we don't find thoroughly miserable. So I think we will do it again. But in the time that I've made 3 very poor, mediocre movies, I have made literally 60, maybe 70 feature documentaries. Not one of those documentary experiences has been anything other than pretty damn fabulous. Why would I shift to anything else? I mean, do I have a favorite documentary? It's like saying, do I have a favorite movie? I mean, I don't have a favorite documentary. As I said, the documentary that set me on the path to making documentaries was a film called When We Were Kings, which was an Academy Award-winning documentary, ostensibly about a fight in Zaire between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman, but was really about so much more, not least one of the greatest and most remarkable human beings that ever walked the planet, who 3 years ago I was lucky enough to be part of making a film about myself called I Am Ali, but a film about Muhammad Ali. There are many docs that I've found incredibly inspiring over the years. Yeah, When We Were Kings was the first of them. I mean, I think there's a film called 14 Days in May, unbelievably brilliant film. Man on Wire, unbelievably brilliant film. Buck, wonderful film. It's too early in the morning for me to be able to wrap, but there's so many. Shut Up and Sing, fantastic film. I'm missing hundreds of great films, but I suppose When We Were Kings. If you made a point to absolutely one, it would be When We Were Kings. I'd like to produce a documentary, the conclusion of which is that women run the world. Men have had their chance for centuries, and we've fucked the whole thing up, quite frankly. I think it's time someone else took over. So that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to make a movie the conclusion of which was all the big important positions of power are no longer occupied by men. They're occupied by women, because I just believe the world will be a kinder, gentler, possibly more temperamental, but a safer place. I mean, I'd encourage everyone on Peace Day to do whatever they possibly can to promote the concept of peace on that day and on every day if possible. So, yeah, take to the streets, make films, write songs, write poems, write letters, make peace with someone that you've been warring with, whatever possibly can be done on that day. And as I said, I don't know why it needs to be limited to that day. On whatever day you possibly can, to just, the world is a terrible, terrible mess, more than I can ever remember it. Having not lived through a world war, I've never felt less safe. Whatever anyone can be doing to be promoting the concept of non-violence, peace, I'm all for it.